Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this amazing discussion about out of home. I'm so excited today to have an esteemed panel joining us today, and really can't wait to unpack all things out of home and kind of, out of home should be in the spotlight, and I'm very glad to bring the spotlight to out of home. I'd like to thank our panelists for joining us today, and a special thank you to our sponsors, Tractor Outdoor, Airport Ads, and Outdoor Network, as well as Arena Events. Thank you for sponsoring today's events. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to having a discussion with everybody around a subject that's really passionate to me from an out-of-home perspective. Kind of looking back over the past 2 years and the impact of COVID on all the different businesses, I think the out-of-home industry was significantly impacted. All formats and environments were impacted in a different way. And I think what's amazing is that we're really starting to see the recovery in all environments. But I'd like to switch over to and welcome to Mzi, the Deputy CEO of Programmatic Media Group. Thank you for joining us, Mzi.
Thank you, Livia, and thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for the guests for joining us. We look forward to this session.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mzi. Mzi, when we kind of think of the airport space, it was hugely impacted during COVID with travel restrictions, and kind of, I really want to speak more about the recovery and put the pandemic all behind us. So can you give us an update on what's happening currently in the airport space? How are the passenger figures looking? What recovery are we seeing post-COVID in the airport?
Yes, so definitely there's a recovery in the airports. During COVID, it was depressing when we had to visit the airports. They were like ghost towns, as you can imagine. If we take our town as big as it is, there are no passengers. We had to go and remove some advertising at the airport. So it was sad for us. And I actually also realized that actually advertising makes airport look better with all the stuff we put up at the airports. So in terms of recovery, we started immediately after the president said you can travel. We were so excited to see people back, passengers back at the airports. Yeah, and it's been good recovery, both in terms of passenger volumes in all the airports, and also in terms of the advertisers coming back. Some advertisers never left the airport, even during COVID. Investec as a good example. So they love that space so much. So in terms of passenger volumes, I'm not going to use last year comparing this year or during COVID, because we're going to be talking about 300% growth year on year, which is maybe a false reflection of what's happening. So we'll use 2019 as a base, comparing 2019 and this year. So I'll start globally. Globally, we're looking at about, they say if you compare 2019 and 2022 globally, we're looking at about 70% passenger recovery by end of this year. If you come home, which I think that's what you're really interested in July this year, that's the last passenger numbers we got from AXA and all the airports that we deal with. If you compare 2019 July and 2022, we're around 70% in terms of passenger recovery. We are very excited about this. I think overall the whole world now is learning to live with COVID. In our town, for instance, domestic now, we're sitting around 74% if you compare 2019 July and 2022. So we're excited about that, given that our town is the biggest airport in South Africa. They're saying, I say around October, November, December. That's when people will travel the most. We probably will be close to 90–80% in terms of passenger volumes overall in South Africa. And I think that's going to also help us a bit, maybe in terms of recovery, is that there's no more COVID protocols at the airport. Everything is back similar to 2019. So yeah, I think the war in Russia, someone earlier on mentioned that there's a lot of Germans in South Africa. So I think some of them, they actually phoned the president and say, can you please open your country? We want to come to Frankfurt. So South Africa is a sought-out destination across the world. So yeah, I think this year will be close October, November, December, which is peak travel in South Africa, will be close to 90%. Some airports like East London, George, what has happened, because now people have hybrid working arrangements, most of the, I'll say this, rich people kind of moved to George. Hermanus apparently is buzzing with people from Joburg because now you can work from home. Guys sold houses and moved to George. So George was a major, that area, Southern Cape, benefited a lot in terms of people moving down. So that airport, already around Easter this year, we saw passenger volumes going back to about 90% of 2019. So South Africans are traveling, especially domestically. And now with the world being opened up, we are seeing, I was in Old Tambo yesterday, the airport was buzzing, was full. So yeah, there's we're expecting that by this time, first quarter of next year, we should be as close to 2019 volumes as possible. So everything back to normal. So long and short of it, passengers are back and people are looking forward to travel locally and globally, whether you're visiting your relatives or you're traveling for business. So yeah, that's the long and short of it.
Yeah, Mzi, thank you so much for that thorough update and your kind of insights in that space. I think what's really important as out-of-home experts and out-of-home enthusiasts and media specialists is to ensure that your strategic decisions are based on the information as it stands currently, not on your preconceived or previous kind of what was happening in an environment. It's more to say what is currently happening and using current data to inform your decisions. I'd now like to move over to Anissa. Anissa is the owner and founder of Keys Communication. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Liv. Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to have you.
Yes, thank you.
You guys are experts in the township space, and I want to find out from you, what are you seeing with regards to changes in behavior in the township space post-COVID? I think the township environment is hugely adaptive, and there's always something new going on in that space. And I'd love to hear how you've seen the pandemic impact kind of consumer behavior in the township space.
Okay, thank you. That's a great question. So we all know that over the pandemic, all consumers were cash-strapped. What we know of cash-strapped consumers is that they shop around for bargains, they shop around for value for money within their environments. So in the township economy, we've noted two important insights, which are one of them is shop locally. What that meant was, because people were not able to move around freely within the lockdown period, so people had to make use of the environment around them, shop at their local spaza shop, shop at their local supermarket. And because of that, we've seen an increase at the spaza spend. The consumer has spent more than 11% at the local spazas than they would have spent at the normal retailer. And because consumer had to make do with whatever they've had in their local spaces, we've seen an increase of entrepreneurs in the township. And most of them, as everybody knows, entrepreneurs in the township, they never consider themselves as entrepreneur or a formal business. They will always call it a small business or a side hustle. So we're going to use the side hustle term a lot. Even people that had office jobs, they started their side hustle to complement the salaries that they were getting, or the lack of salaries that they were getting, because we know that most people lost their jobs during the COVID period. For example, in Soweto, we've seen an increase in income of 33.6% over the lockdown period, which we are attributing it to the side hustles or this the startup business within this economy. So the other point that I just want to highlight is the increase in online sales. Like I mentioned to you, cash-strapped consumers shop around online, shop around for bargains, for value for money. So online made it easy for consumers to go online, check prices against one store against the other, because then they're staying at home, they don't have to drive around, they can save the money to sit down and do online shopping in the comfort of their own home. Since the start of COVID, we've seen an increase of 70% of township residents reported buying something online. And obviously this is driven mostly by the youth, the youth are more open into buying online because they savvy with tech more than the older generation is, in terms of using technology. Even though township consumers, even now, when we no longer have the lockdown restrictions or the COVID-19 restrictions, we don't see this trend changing in the township. People now know how to buy online, and they've seen the benefits of buying online. It saves them time, it saves them money, and things get delivered in their homes. So therefore, this trend is not going to change. Instead, we think that it's going to increase. More people are going to buy online, and we've seen the trend in terms of people are buying more online, like your food, they would go on Mr. Delivery online or any of those platforms to buy online. So if I may link it back to what we do during the lockdown period, we've seen an increase on some of our sites that are Wi-Fi enabled. We have sites that are Wi-Fi enabled within the communities. So we have seen an increase of people going onto our sites and logging in onto our Wi-Fi, because the township consumers, they're aware of Wi-Fi. Now they need Wi-Fi to upload their CVs. They need Wi-Fi to buy online. They need Wi-Fi to go on social media, for instance. So we've seen people logging in. The range is different from each site. Some of them is 20 per day to 600 per day. So every site, we've seen a massive increase in people using free Wi-Fi on our sites.
Yeah. Anissa, thank you so much for sharing those insights with us. And I think what's really interesting to me is what you mentioned at the end here with around the Wi-Fi kind of, having a wall mural with Wi-Fi enabled or a spaza with Wi-Fi gives an opportunity for the community to connect and obviously do whatever they might need to do. And I think that online offline integration is an amazing merging of like different media channels together. And that kind of brings me to our next panelist. I'd like to welcome Sadika, who's the Integrated Media and Digital Director, Group Marketing for Tiger Brands. Sadika, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's an absolute honor.
Yeah, Sadika, you have had an amazing career and worked on some of the biggest brands in South Africa, such as FNB and now on Tiger Brands. And I'd love to hear from your perspective, how best can the out-of-home world and the digital world be integrated together? And what is the biggest opportunity in that space from your perspective?
I think you've hit the nail on the head. It's all about online, offline integration. And that's where I've seen the biggest growth, whether I'm talking and representing where I was representing FinServe and now moving into consumer goods. I think the perception of out of home needs to firstly be shifted, that it's not just about a billboard anymore. It's not about a building wrap. It's about how out of home fits into the lives of the consumer. That's the critical thing when we plan our integrated channel strategies. It's how does it fit into the shifting landscape of the consumer and the shifting patterns of the consumer. So we are dealing increased digital consumption and increased digital penetration, whether it be en route and off route to work, whether it be in your lifestyle areas, and it's how out of home actually serves an awareness function, but moving down the funnel. A lot of data is now showing us that out of home can be used at the engagement level of the funnel and even down to that level of conversion. So that's the critical component. What I agonize over is creative excellence in out of home, and that's something that's critical. It has to be fit for purpose. You cannot, you cannot put a print ad on an out of home site, and especially with I could see lots of chuckles because we've seen that creative, and I turn it down. Creative excellence is impeccable, and this is where I implore the industry. I implore the agency partners, whether it's the creative agencies, the digital agencies, or our media agencies, and then the media partners or the media owners, the owners of platforms, to just derive creative excellence and best practice. That's the first thing about really impactful out of home, because you'll get the statement, there's no ROI on outdoor, it's just there for a pretty picture. But of course, if the creative message doesn't have the right call to action, or you haven't used digital out of home to drive some level of RSS feed or engagement or call to action, of course, you're not going to see that, or you haven't done the relevant marketing mix modeling. So that's the critical component. Creative excellence fit for channel. Fundamentally, a digital out of home site is completely different to an ambient activation space in a mall, fundamentally different to portrait versus landscape. So that's critical. And then Anissa hit on the topic make it relevant for the community that you're planning in. And that's something that we agonize over as well. I recall agonizing over that when I was at Nedbank and FNB, because ultimately you're looking for your branch, you're looking for your ATM, or you're creating some level of a sense of community or a node, and your local bank form that ultimately is what we always created, some level of nodal awareness. And it's how you brand a specific area, because in any one of our categories, we want to block our competitors out. Now that I'm on oats and I'm on mayonnaise, we want to block our competitors out. It's the same with any category. So how do you create that? I think the quick service restaurant industry has done fantastically well at that, because it's your local restaurant down the road, and you calling to action there. So of course your call to action needs to match the channel. And then the other concept of integration is be consistent with the message that's on traditional channels. It's as simple as that. And you may want to double click if it's a call to action to buy a R3.99 deal, or whatever the case is. Yes, you can go to product and price, but it needs to be the offset of the overall key visual or big idea that you're seeing across other channels.
Yeah, Sadika, thank you so much for that. And I love that you have highlighted the creative aspect because, I think like everybody on the panel can agree that it really is a really critical point that you can have the most amazing strategy and plan the most amazingly perfect campaign and have the most perfect sites planned, but if the creative doesn't follow through, your campaign can definitely suffer. And I think it also speaks to kind of the integration of this media ecosystem, where you've got media owners, media agencies, creative agencies, and clients all coming together to kind of bring a campaign to life. I'd like to now welcome Celia to our panel. Celia is the head of media at Publicis Group. Thank you so much for joining us, Seals.
Thanks, Liv, and thanks for putting such a great panel together. I'm actually quite intimidated. Everything I was thinking of saying, they're all saying it already. I'm like, uh-oh.
Seals, don't worry about that. You have an extensive industry, and trust me, everybody wants to hear your perspective too. So thank you for joining us. And a lot of the engagements that I've had with media owners specifically are a lot of them say to me, Liv, how do we get in with the agencies? We don't know who to chat to. When we talk to them, they don't want to meet us, or we meet with the wrong person. It can be quite intimidating for media owners, especially some new guys in the market, to know, how do we crack the relationship with agencies? From your experience, what advice can you give to media owners who are either established or starting out on how do you grow like partner relationships with an agency and not just be a service provider that blends into the background?
I mean, there are so many media owners out there, and I think when we're looking at it from a media agency perspective, you have to stand out. You can't stand in the background and only just represent what that one billboard that you want to sell to that brand. You have to understand the landscape in which you're working and make sure you understand the brand's consumer. Let's be honest, the consumer is at the heart of everything we do. And if you're going to go into a media agency and not understand that consumer and how it fits into the realm of an agnostic approach, you're not going to be able to do that sell anymore. But it's also not just about going to one person in the agency. It's going to multiple people in the agency. And I say the word agency quite loosely because as Sadika said, creative agencies, why do we keep forgetting them? Why don't we include them into the mix on how we target them? And what is the right creative for the right space for the right consumer? We have to know, do we just go to the strategist to say we make a point in contacting the person, but what about the planner? What about the buyer? What about the data analysis? How about going to them and drawing all that data out and using it to your benefit? If a media owner comes to me and understands the landscape, let's have a look at Netflix. We know we've come out of COVID. How is the television environment changing? We know Netflix is dropping consumers. So what does that mean for us? It means, especially for out of home, we're all going out again. We're starting to attend functions. And how do we integrate that into out of home? What does it mean? We should be pumping on out of home right now. Mzi said, by 2023, and this really excites me, 100% back at the airport. But do we understand post-COVID how the consumers are actually changing their habits in the airport and how they're consuming that medium to be able to sell it not only into media agencies, but into clients? Anissa talked about having the online attribution and price-led product. But how do we make sure that when we're out of home, we drive that top of the funnel onto digital to ensure that those consumers actually go and purchase? So in basic, what I'm trying to say is have as many contacts along the chain as what you can, not only media, not only out of home, understand the wider landscape and pull the creative into that discussion.
Yeah, Seals, thanks so much for that. And I love what you've highlighted, specifically your Netflix example, I think really hits home around like people are outside, and when they're outside, they can see out of home, and we should be capitalizing on that. And I think also some of the points you've highlighted really can give like confidence to the media owners around like you're not just your little billboard, you are actually part of a media ecosystem. So I love the advice and guidance that you've given there. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. And you know what I'm finding in my new position is I have the media owners coming past my door, and I'm like, why aren't they coming to talk to me? And they steer away from me. I love having those robust conversations. Come talk to me. I can also get my people to actually open up. I can possibly see an opportunity and help you get that into the brand in the correct way.
Yeah, thanks, Seals. I really love that. And yeah, you've given an open door to everyone on the call. Great. I want to just cross over to Warren now, who's the head of sales for Outdoor Network. Thanks for joining us, Warren.
Thanks, Liv. Thanks for having me, and good morning to everyone. Yeah,
I think we would be amiss to have a conversation about out of home without discussing digital out of home. And we're going to be doing a deep dive into digital out of home coming up on the panel. But I wanted to specifically chat about static out of home. I think amongst the glitz and the glamour that is digital out of home, it's important to remember that a fundamental building block out of home is static traditional out of home, and it always will remain and secure its place in out of home. And it's to understand what is happening in static out of home. And Warren, if you could give us an update around what are you seeing in the static space at the moment, and also what is static out of home doing, in your opinion, to still secure its space in kind of the out of home mix amongst its very shiny new cousin digital out of home?
Yeah, thanks, Liv. I think, again, if we go back to 2020, our favorite friend, COVID, reset the markets hugely, and a huge amount of brands lost their equity in the market. So, if we're moving 2 years on, we definitely see a big return of demand and increased occupancy in static. And I believe this is driven by the brand building power of static out of home. So I think the fact that it cannot be switched off is always key, and that helps its case. And consumers are enjoying the journey. Yes, the traffic is getting back up there to where it was previously, I feel, but I think it's also spread over the day a lot more. People working with the hybrid models, so they'll be coming in maybe to the office slightly later or lunchtime. So consumers are enjoying the journey a lot more on the way to and from work, which creates that receptiveness to them looking at some out of home and or billboards when they are driving. If we're looking at a recent study by Kantar, it indicated that out of home is the highest ad receptivity amongst the South African consumers. Digital out of home is number 3 in SA, and static out of home is the highest brand equity of all media platforms tested, which were both online and offline. So, static really is enhancing the consumer's perception of a brand, which is a key aspect for all of this. Another big focus in terms of static is the innovation. The LEDs, the special builds, all the exciting campaigns that we've seen in and around us. And parts, and some of these might include, the Nando's campaigns, the Holla Changemaker, Wimpy, Disney, Steers, The Boys, etc., etc. So there really is some exciting special builds and innovation that is out there for static out of home. So, for me, static definitely will hold its own with, as it allows for all of these out-of-the-box creative executions. And I think too, across, people have already brought it up in terms of the creative and what's being done is massively important to get that out there for static. So, there definitely will be an increase in demand with brands wanting to recapture all consumers' attention in static out of home. So yeah, for me, it's very positive, and things definitely are on the up.
Yeah, Warren, thank you so much for that. And I think that you've highlighted an amazing point that's going to come up throughout the rest of the conversation, I'm sure, and has come up already around innovation. So the static format allows itself, as you mentioned, to like some production innovation on sites, as well as like helping to execute innovative ideas. Speaking of like innovation, I think crossing over to the digital out-of-home side of things, I'd like to welcome Remy, who's the commercial director from Tractor Outdoor. Thank you for joining us today, Remy.
Good morning, Liv. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, Remy, it's great to have you, and it's great to have you speaking to us about programmatic digital out of home. So, I think before I kind of hand over to you, when programmatic kind of first came to market, I think as an out of home expert, kind of felt like, what is this thing? It belongs with the digital people. I'm like scared of it. What is it? Who do I chat to? Who are the media owners? What does it mean? Like, how can you buy it automatically? This is out of home. I don't understand. So a lot of questions, quite a complex kind of concept. It's come to market. And I think the come to market process has also been an adaptive one, as with anything new. But overall, it's quite an overwhelming kind of concept to come to market. It can be very intimidating. So in like very simple terms, can you give us an explanation of kind of what programmatic or optimized planning is, and also what is the benefit for clients as well as for consumers around looking or considering programmatic digital out of home?
Sure. Well, we've definitely come a long way since our very first programmatic campaign that you and I actually ran together back in 2020, and there's been a lot of learning since then. But look, we still find that people are quite intimidated by the term programmatic. A lot of strategists are still struggling to understand, how does it fit in? How do they use it? So we've been spending a lot of time on adopting probably a easier to understand framework, which is optimized planning. And all it is, if you think about the way you implement a digital out-of-home campaign, it is just another method to buy out-of-home. That's all that it is. So everybody's been used to loop-based buying, where it still has its place. So I think as we talk about programmatic, it's not the death of the loop. The loop still exists and it has its purpose, which is obviously frequency-based if you want to be on the same billboard consistently. But optimized planning is just something that gives people a new strategic angle within their toolbox. So what it means now is that clients are able to now self-manage their own campaigns via technology that is connected to a universe of digital out-of-home screens. A lot of clients don't necessarily have access to this, which is fine. A lot of media owners are able to implement optimized planning style campaigns within their own accord. So one of the key foundations or mindset changes that need to happen is, previously we would strategize and think of booking time on a billboard. I'm buying the spots in the loop. I need to deliver 240 ad plays per day or per hour, whatever the case may be, across a period of time. Where the shift is now, we are looking at how many impressions. That is the new goal. How many people are potentially seeing my advert? That is more in alignment with digital, typical digital kind of strategy. So within our space, we see, to make it easy, there's 4 pillars that sort of make up optimized planning that wasn't available under loop-based buying. And again, this just brings a lot of flexibility. That is location, time, moment, or dynamic advertising, which has been around for a while as well, and then also measurement. So for the very first time, we can actually measure out of home quite efficiently. As Sidika was talking about ROI, we can actually measure out of home quite clearly now. So looking at location, so the idea would be, how can we be more granular? We've seen the shifts of people after COVID is people are not necessarily consistent in their behaviors anymore. People are moving around at different times of day, deciding to work from home, deciding to go into the office. But what's happened is that these platforms now have a mobile device tracking sort of set within them. So, for example, if we are intentional about targeting the youth, instead of trying to book billboards that are only located around universities, let's look at the cell phones that are going into the universities and which billboards are they actually going past. The systems will automatically be able to start placing ads when it expects to see those audiences outside the screens. Likewise, if you're looking to target businessmen, let's look at cell phones that are seen inside airports or business parks and which billboards they go past. Or if you're looking to target online shoppers, we can even go as deep to see, does someone have a Take-A-Lot app installed on their phone? We are interested in observing the movements of these audiences and serving a bit more targeted ads to them on digital out-of-home screens. Other flexibilities is time. So of course, now we start thinking about time. Previously, we would just book a spot in the loop and you'd be on all the time. Now we've got to think of what time of day do we want to be serving ads, not when the audience is just in front of the screen, but when could they potentially be in the right frame of mind? So this brings us some flexibility in the space. So let me give you 2 examples. We ran a campaign for an energy drink that wanted to compete with coffee consumers. And all they did was advertise for 2 hours in the morning from 7 to 9. And that little slot, that little time band saw them a 40% increase year-on-year sales. So just goes to show you don't have to be on all the time. You just only need to be on when it makes sense. Another example is we've worked with an online retailer and their information to us was their sales are horrible on Fridays and Saturdays. Obviously, people like going out, going for drinks after work and whatnot. People aren't shopping online. So cut it. It doesn't make sense to advertise during that time. Let's rather advertise on Sundays and Mondays when the client themselves has told us this is when our sales are typically the highest or when people are typically shopping online. So again, it's listening to the customer and it's using these tools to your advantage. Other elements which are not old, but we're not seeing a lot of movement on it, but a good opportunity is moment advertising or dynamic content. As Sidika mentioned, it is about creative excellence. And we do need to start roping in creative agencies because we can now start serving adverts that are more contextually relevant. So let me give you an example. You could be running an advert for a car. And if it happens to be sunny outside of a billboard or within a city, rather showcase creative with a sunroof open or the convertible flap open. And if it's raining, have the creative change to rather feature the safety features of that vehicle. It becomes a little bit more contextually relevant and consumers do lean into that. Other examples, you could have an insurance brand that only advertises when there's been a small fender bender outside of a billboard. It's a great opportunity for a brand to position themselves near something that makes sense. Otherwise, you could also use very simple callouts, and I think Standard Bank did it very well. I saw it in Cape Town CBD where it just said that Cape Town banks on us, we bank on Cape Town. And likewise, you would have seen that same creative in Bryanston and Johannesburg. It's tailored to that particular suburb and people lean into that style of creative. When it gets to measurement in the digital out-of-home front, and this is what really gets me excited, is because we can obviously be accountable now, is we can monitor in real time the number of impressions that are being served on billboards. And this is data that comes in from the Outdoor Measurement Council. If you have customers that have an intention to drive people into a store, we can now, using the mobile devices that all of us have on ourselves all the time, identify people that have seen a billboard or been in proximity when the ad flighted, and did they actually physically be seen inside of a shop again? And we can compare those to see if there's been an increase in footfall. Likewise, we can also do brandless studies as well by asking consumers how they feel about brands when you have a brand-related campaign. And mobile retargeting is also a new interesting sphere that we are trying to crack properly, whereby a consumer that has been in contact with a digital out-of-home ad will have that same ad follow them on their cell phone as well, where you can then start measuring any call to action within an online space. As far as the main benefits that we see is firstly, it's extremely cost effective. So a strategist no longer needs to go, this is my budget, how many billboards can I afford? Instead, they must go, this is my budget, how many times do I want my ads to be viewed? It becomes irrelevant with how many billboards you book because the systems will automatically decide across a universe and across audiences where it needs to schedule those ads. So this is automated. We can also be more accurate in who we're serving our ads to. So out-of-home's obviously always been one to many, but again, we can be a little bit more selective on who we serve our ads to. We can also switch our ads on and off whenever we need to based on the flexibility that we now have of time of day planning. And as I said, we can be more accountable, which is the most favorite thing for me in out of home, because when you can prove that it works, we start seeing more money shifting into our industry.
Yeah, Remy, thank you so much for that really detailed response. And I think you've unpacked quite a lot of like aspects of programmatic out of home and of integrated campaigns. So thank you for that. I love that you've highlighted it is not death of the loop, and I love that expression because I've had a lot of conversations with clients who feel, are we left out? Do we only buy programmatically? Do we forget about buying in the traditional digital out of home way? And I think it's more like, what is the strategic approach? What, like you said, what is the client wanting? What are the objectives? It's not to say everything goes out the window and programmatic is the only thing. It's more to say programmatic has its place when it is strategically relevant, just like it has its place from when you're planning your digital online. So thank you so much for unpacking all of that. I'd now like to move over to Sally, who is the head of out of home for Group M SSA. Thank you for joining us, Sals.
Thanks for having me, Liv, and yeah, thanks to the panelists. It's been such a cool chat so far.
Yeah, I'm in like my geeked out element of out of home right now with all of the chatter. Sals, I wanted to ask you, kind of Remy's unpacked some, and Sadika as well, and actually most of the panelists have touched on like this integrated strategies, crossing media channels. When it comes to integrated strategies and innovation, what are clients looking for, and how can media owners and media agencies work together to help bring those campaigns to life?
Thanks, Liv. Yeah, it's such a big question. You know, as you're sitting on the agency side, it's amazing how many touch points there are in out of home, you know, not just the billboard and not just the digital screen. There are so many facets in the landscape to play with on integrated strategies and on innovation. And it's like, it's what really gets me ticking in this environment. So there's quite a lot to chat about. But I think at the end of the day, you know, a client is looking for an action or transaction, you know, at the end of the campaign. We need some sort of connection with the consumer. And what I love about the chat so far is everybody's brought the concept of creative relevancy into the mix. And, you know, I've been reading a lot of content lately around relevancy as well. And it's something that for years and years we've been talking about, like, make your communication relevant, understand who is receiving that message and have a conversation with that person. But how do we do that in out of home, you know? And this is where we can really start to get innovative and have so much fun. So creating that emotional response and that emotional resonance for me is really what gives a campaign legs, you know, other than the ROI and the data-driven approach, which is fundamental. It's like, how do we just elevate that little extra step? So there's lots of fun stuff happening. Remy touched on it, but there's a very strong trend to mobile and out-of-home integration. So, you know, that media mix is becoming more approachable effectively, because you have to be offline to be pushed online, and you know how we actually insulating with those people. So I think a big part of it is understanding the location first and foremost. You know, in out of home is really what we look to, but then the mobile overlays are really allowing us to extend that message past that first point of location, but to make sure that that messaging is integrated. So again, coming back to the creative principle and who's the target market that we're focusing on, and are they actually being reached? So it kind of goes into like a hyper-location principle, which is making out of home really, really even more specific than it was in the past, which is really, really great for us. So I'm getting quite excited about that mobile and out of home space, because it really does build a very robust reporting metric for us. And starts to layer the out-of-home strategy, which is obviously quite cool, and I think our clients are also loving it. You know, we spoke about the programmatic digital out-of-home aspects already. I mean, I'm not going to jump on that too much, but as Remy mentioned, this is a huge focus point, I think, for agencies and clients alike, where the strategy, you know, speaks to that requirement. I do think there's a bit of work to be done in unpacking the differences between programmatic digital out of home and loop-based buying. And, you know, as you mentioned, Liv, where do these sit in the strategy? But, you know, things don't work in isolation. So out of home has got so many touch points, and there's, like Remy said, maybe Friday, Saturday, you're not going to play that ad. And that forms part of a much bigger picture. So when we start to pull that together, we can get, you know, quite creative with the messaging. There's obviously like the ultra hot topic at the moment about anamorphic and deep motion digital. I'm so excited that this is like finally hit our shores. It's, launched a couple of months back. And it's been such an exciting space for us to like level up our digital out of home opportunities. So, creating content that's on a global scale that is being posted onto social media, we again start to see this integration on how out of home, it starts to talk for itself. When you can get a consumer to interact with your ad and to opt in to interact with your ad. Like, it's not we just pushing messages. We're actually saying, hey, come and engage with us. And anamorphic and deep motion are definitely creating a lot of social traction, which is awesome. But then furthermore to that, you have gamification. So, out of home doesn't have to be a flat layer. And what we're seeing now is we're starting to bring gamification into obviously the right strategic approaches, but the consumer can now bring that banner to life. So we ran a campaign recently, actually, where we had a gamified layer over the banner, and the results were really just phenomenal because we started seeing a digital reach from our out-of-home campaign, and the talkability that's created around that, and the resonance that's built, and the emotional connection that's built. It's that's when you're really doing some phenomenal stuff in our landscape. Obviously, we're talking about the topic of innovation. I'd love to see the 7D projections. I'd love to see the drone tech and like dragons flying over Sandton City, but I don't think we're quite there yet. I'd love to have access to that kind of stuff, and then you'll really see things starting to come alive. But to pull it back to what you were asking in the beginning there, Liv, how media owners and agencies can work together. Those that know me know I'm very big on collaboration. And I think with this changing landscape and with the more kind of involved consumer as technology starts to become more available to all consumers, we need to workshop. Like, we need to get clients, agencies, creative agencies, media owners, we need to get around a table and have a discussion, especially with these big launches, to say, how do we do things differently? How do we be bold? And how do we create partnerships that going down the line can actually drive that ROI that we're looking for at the end of the day? So it's not just this or just that. And sometimes, two heads are better than one. And I really feel that we need to make ourselves available to have these conversations. And then hopefully we can just get stronger and stronger every year.
Yeah, Sally, thank you so much. Unpacked some really cool ideas around the anamorphic and the innovation. And I think that, it's such an exciting space. And I think that, once you start to pull together all the elements and kind of, you mentioned workshopping with media owners and bringing together clients and agencies and media owners and creative agencies and everybody within the mix together, you start to see kind of amazing work come to life and actually come to life and not just be left kind of on the cutting room floor, so to speak, and actually bringing those ideas to life. I'd like to now welcome Ivania, who is the media planning manager South Africa for Coca-Cola Africa. Thank you for joining us, Ivania.
Thank you so much, Liv. Thank you for having me. I feel very, very fortunate and cool to be part of this very cool panel. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This is where the cool kids hang out, right?
Most definitely.
Yeah, Ivania, you kind of sit in, from a client perspective, right? I think if I think of all the pieces of the media ecosystem, you've got media owners, agencies, creative agencies, and the client. And I think that the client role is sometimes the most coveted role because you guys ultimately are the brand custodians for the brands that you represent. And you guys decide strategically how you will bring your brand to life, obviously with the guidance and support and partnership of your agency partners. And I think that, a lot of the time, people want to know, how did the client choose this? Or what did the client say? Everything's the client. So, it's an amazing position to be in. And I think I wanted to ask you from your experience, obviously Coca-Cola is a huge brand that everybody's familiar with a lot of different brands in that stable. And what is like a out-of-home campaign that stands out in your mind as like a great piece of work or just like an excellent piece of work from in the out-of-home space?
Cool. Thanks for the question. And thanks for allowing me to speak about the brand. I'm super passionate about Coca-Cola, so it makes me very excited to answer a question like this. Look, I joined Coke on the client side of things just as COVID decided to be present, which wasn't too fun. So unfortunately, during my almost 3 years at Coca-Cola, I've only really had the chance to sort of brief in and finally execute some cool and innovative stuff for out of home this side of the year. And one of them actually being a very recent campaign that we've just launched sort of 3 weeks ago called Coke Studio. And without a doubt, I can almost say that this will definitely be one of the campaigns that will stand out for me in my career and for Coca-Cola in South Africa as well. I think with the help of our trusted partners at Group M, the Group M out-of-home agency, we've managed to create a mobile karaoke billboard, which is really, really cool. And yeah, I see Sally clapping in the background there. So this will be making its rounds in Joburg, hopefully Cape Town and Durban soon as well. And I mean, who doesn't love karaoke, right? At the end of the day, you all want to get out there and get your vocal cords going, whether you're a few drinks down or not, but won't give any of that away. But yeah, I think Liv, just taking it back to your question, and what sort of stands out for the role that out-of-home plays here. I think the whole concept of Coke Studio for us is bringing creative collisions to life, right? Whether that be through our artists, partnerships, or consumers. And I know Celia and Sadiqa both touched on, the consumers is at the core of everything that we do when we bring our brands to life. And I think this is one thing where, out of home is giving the consumer an experience to be part of a campaign, which is really cool because at the end of the day, we want to bring our brands to life in that essence. So creating this ultimate creative collision between our consumer and our brand and giving our consumer this experience to be part of it is exactly what we want to bring to it. So yeah, I think we're very excited for it. And it's going to be something very cool that hopefully lives on for a while as one of our very big campaigns. And again, I think, Sadiqa also touched on sort of what ROI does out of home bring to an overall campaign. And I think we get questioned on this a lot on our side as well. You need to bring the results. And I think this is one thing where I always say, yes, you may not get all your tracking metrics from out of home. But at the end of the day, if you bring that experience to your consumer and brand awareness by, creating a holistic campaign around out of home as well, that's basically what we're looking for. You need to be present out there and make sure that your consumer can constantly see you, experience you, and help you bring your brand to life.
Yeah, Vanya, thank you so much. And thank you for sharing your karaoke kind of billboard that's coming to life. I can't wait to keep an eye on it for out in Cape Town. If I see it, I'll go up to it. So yeah, thank you so much. And I think, you've highlighted what I really love about the idea, and this has been touched on already, is that out of home is not just a broadcast medium that stands there static on its own, is that there's all these engagement opportunities that happen along the way, and people want to engage with something. So I love that that idea has come to market, and I definitely will keep an eye out for that. Thank you. Cool. I want to just loop back quickly to Mzi, kind of looking forward to see kind of, we've discussed the pandemic and kind of, the things that the airport has been through and some of the township spaces have been through, and, we're all moving forward. But Mzi, I wanted to find out, what can we expect to see from airport ads over the coming months? What can we expect to see in the airport space kind of going forward?
Okay, thanks for that question once again, Liv. Just again, important to mention that the COVID protocols are gone. I threw away all my masks. I feel sorry for those that bought Louis Vuitton masks. I don't know what they're going to do with them. But yeah, in terms of new in the airports, Cape Town Airport, specifically International Terminal, it's getting very popular. There are direct flights there now, Delta Airlines, flying between Atlanta and Cape Town. Also the United Airlines also have direct routes. These airlines, they didn't fly to Cape Town directly before. So given that Cape Town is a popular destination now, the airlines are flying directly there. Obviously, Joburg our town was the main, is the biggest airport in the continent. So most airlines fly directly to Joburg. In terms of airport ads, what we do, we actually started in 2012 when everybody was leaving the airport after the World Cup. We came in, we brought in new innovation in the space. So we created what we call the 380-degree approach, which means that in terms of advertising, you don't have to go to anyone else. We can sort you out within the airport space. So we basically, our hero products, which is what we started with, is airport TV. I'll talk more about that. And then we do activations at the airport. We've got what we call classics. I don't like the word static. It's classics. You can do a lot of things in terms of static billboards. We now have something called Sona. I will talk about that. So yeah, in terms of a combination of digital activations and static, we can sort you out. We basically in all the airports in South Africa with Airport TV. When we launched Airport TV in 2012, I'll never forget this. People said this is going to fail. Who watches TV at the airport? So yeah, we decided to do an insight study. At the time, it was called Livia Brown, which is now currently Qatar. We did surveys in the airport to figure out if people are watching this thing, because yeah, we were not sure if people are watching. Yeah, and then the results came very positive. They told us where they watched it. We thought people watch most of it when they're waiting for their luggage. No, people watch most of Airport TV when they're on the air side, just about to board the plane, and somehow also in the security area within all the airports. So that was just some of the studies that came out of that. And we ran a campaign also just to check this thing. We did a competition with Samsung. At the time, I think it was Note 10. I think Celia helped us on this as well. She was on the other side, which I'm not going to mention. We just wanted to test the efficacy of this Airport TV, because there was nothing like Airport TV in the world. We started it here in South Africa. And the results came back positive. We had thousands of entries a day, people wanting to win the Note from Samsung. So then we realized we have a winner, and then we ran a controversial campaign where we said FW de Klerk liberated South Africa. The Twitter and social media and the pictures that came out of that, people were like, who are these people running Airport TV? How can they say Airport FW de Klerk liberate? So it was trending in social media. So and then we realized, okay, we have a winner here. So yeah, that's basically our hero products. It's in all the airports. It's in all the key areas of the airport, in all the high dwell zones within the airport. We have it in Lanseria. We have it in Kruger International Airport, in all the AXA airports. So yeah, so we basically now, given the popularity of Cape Town, we were focusing mostly on the domestic terminals with Airport TV. This month, we are actually rolling out Airport TV in Cape Town International Airport. And later on this year, we're going to be rolling out in King Shaka International Airport, given that there is demand for that terminal as well. Qatar Airways is flying directly there now. So yeah, that's one of these our hero products that we're very proud of. What we noticed during COVID, by the way, just to mention that, quite interesting. When COVID, we were in the middle of COVID, clients would book for 2 months. Airport TV and static before that were quite popular in terms of the product mix. I think with 70% revenue generated from static and 30% from Airport TV. During the COVID, actually the other way around, 70% Airport TV bookings and 30% static. So what we are noticing now, the brands are coming back, they're booking long term, 12 months and static. And Airport TV is also growing nicely for us. So yeah, what else is new? We launched what we call Vision Net, basically large format LEDs within the airport. We started in King Shaka, I think in 2014. That didn't do that well for us. And then we rolled out in Lanseria. That was a struggle. And then just before COVID, we installed the biggest LED in the airport, which is we installed it in the departure terminal in Tambo. I think that's the best LED screen in the airports that I've seen the world over. And that just lifted the category. Last month, 2 months ago, we installed in Cape Town, above the doors, the main terminal building. When you leave Cape Town or arrive in Cape Town, you see the screens. It targets all the passengers within the airport in Cape Town. That has also helped lift the whole digital advertising within the airport space. We thought we were going to cannibalize Airport TV by launching VisionNet. No, they've just gone up in terms of demand. So that's a nice little case study for us. And then Remy mentioned combining out of home with handheld devices. When we, as I said, when we launched, we asked Kantar for the survey. One of the things that came out in that survey is that at the airport, people in the main, when they're waiting for their flights, they are using their cell phones or whatever handheld device that they have. And then the insights from that study was that we needed to find a way of linking airport advertising and cell phones. So we grappled with this, and then we partnered with TapTap 2 years ago. So we have a product called Sona. So basically, when you are that's a presentation on its own. Can geofence the airport. So if you're a part of the target market, through your cellular ID, we can reserve you the advert that was at the airport, flighting at the airport when you're in your office home. So, but as I said, that's just a presentation on its own. In terms of static advertising, we created what we call domination zones within the airport space. If you've got one little billboard in the airport, you tend to get lost. So you need to dominate an area or come up with a concept. And we always encourage brands to be in it for a long haul. If you're going to come in and out, it's not going to be as effective. So we also like to create what we call hybrids in the airport space, where we combine either digital with static, or we can come up with illumination concept or some 3D effects within that space. The nice thing about airports is that your imagination is your own limitation. You can come up with stuff at the airport space. We've got a very good relationship with AXA, and they like also to come up with creative ideas, for us to come up with creative ideas so we can make sure that the campaigns within the airport space works. And we also do activations. That's one thing that people don't know, and this can be quite effective. So yeah, in a nutshell is that I find that if you do an integrated campaign within the airport space, where you're combining activations, Airport TV, VisionNet, and some of the static sites, I found those very effective. And one example of that was when we launched Corona in South Africa, have launched Corona in South Africa. They basically, during the November, December, Jan period, just before COVID hit, they booked everything in the airport. They did activations, top 3 airport, they booked Airport TV, they booked VisionNet, they booked some static sites. At the time, we didn't have Sona. And that was one of the most talked campaign in the airport, so much so that some of the competitor brands, like champagne brands, didn't know that. They came to us. We didn't know that you can do this at the airport. So it just became the talk of the town. So in terms of, we always come thinking of new ways, but we also like brands, encourage brands that they must come up with ideas. We don't say no, we always ask and try and make it work. So yeah, that's a long and short of it. We've helped a lot of brands launch in South Africa within the airport space, and we like to think that we're about long-term relationships as opposed to take your money and run away. We give you campaign feedback, especially if you book our digital sites. So yeah, that's basically the long and short of it. As I said earlier on, beginning of 2023, I foresee that we're going to exceed 2019 numbers, given what I'm seeing at the moment. So yeah, and then the last but not least, we're working on a major new concept with AXA. So digital. The growth of it in terms of airports has been quite encouraging. So we're working on a nice digital site in our Tambo with AXA. Hopefully we'll have that up just before and everybody else goes on Christmas. So watch your space. Thank you so much.
Yeah, great. Mzi, thank you so much for the update. And yeah, I definitely will be watching that space for something new coming up. Yeah, I'd like to move over to Anissa again. Anissa, just to kind of switch environments from the airport to the township, what are kind of some of the most common misconceptions that you found about the township space, and how would you like to dispel those kind of misconceptions that some people might have about that environment?
So what we've noticed is that the biggest misconception that the marketers have about the township consumer is that most marketers think, or they say, that the township consumer is poor and is unsophisticated. And what we know is that the total size of the township economy is valued at 400 billion. In addition, we've seen that over 2.6 billion people are employed in the township economy. So this shows us that the township economy is thriving and is lucrative for business, right? Let me give you an example, or let's look at some a quick example, like for payment methods. So most people in the township will use 35% people in the township will use cash to pay for their goods, and 30% of them will use card to pay for their goods, and 18% of them will use mobile phones to pay for whatever they are buying in the stores, right? So what this tells us, what has shown us, it shows us that the merchant segment in the township is growing. People are willing to use their cards to pay for stuff, which shows the sophistication that most people thought they don't have in the township. So let me give you an example. Yoko, for instance, have 20% of their devices being used into the township. So they're the largest merchants, township merchants currently. Let me give you another example in terms of card payments. We've got one of our tavern owners in the township that decided to install a card payment system. And within the 3 months that he's installed it, he was able to bill 520,000 in 3 months. Therefore, this shows us that over 12-month period, his consumers would have made card transactions worth 1.8 million. So the point that I'm trying to drive here is that there's a sizable buying audience, and this audience is savvy and it is in the township. Therefore, there's an opportunity for brands to build bespoke campaigns that talk to the consumer in the township in their language and in their style. And like everybody else has touched onto the panelists have touched on into the creative that is relevant to the consumer and the language that is relevant to the consumer. And also, we're even thinking that probably some of the brands could design loyalty programs that are for the township audience.
Yeah, Anissa, thank you so much. And what I love about your response is that you've given such specific examples to that environment. Obviously, it's a certain landscape that is very familiar to you. So thanks for sharing those insights. Kind of moving over to Remy, you know, Mzi chatted to us about what's coming up in the airport space from his perspective. And I wanted to find out, Remy, from you, from a digital out-of-home perspective. I know you're really, you know, involved and excited about kind of the ROI and the data side of it and programmatic and optimized planning. What do you foresee kind of the next, you know, if you could look into the future, what does the next year hold for digital out-of-home specifically?
Well, I'd say as far as programmatic and optimized planning is concerned, we find that most agencies to some degree are testing it out at the moment. So at least for the next 12 months, we're probably going to see more clients and agencies consistently testing it out, getting feedback, because everybody's trying to understand how's the best way to optimize this new particular channel. I've noticed as well within different agencies, the way it's structured is different from agency to agency. Agencies are still trying to grapple with, is it the out-of-home team that has to book programmatically, or is it the digital team, or is it, you know, is it a combination of both? And as I said, every agency that I've experienced so far is doing it differently. Nobody is doing it exactly the same way. So the market is going to figure out over the next couple of months what makes sense within those environments. But because of this, we're also going to start seeing spend from digital traditional digital spend is starting to creep over into the out-of-home space. Digital strategists are able to now, when they book their digital campaign and book mobile advertising within their traditional tool sets, they now have a little drop down that goes out of home, and they can actually connect into digital screens for those media owners that are connected. So we're going to definitely start seeing a big increase in digital spend, digital money coming into the digital out of home space. However, as programmatic ad spend increases, there is a big need for third-party verification. So what this means is ad play verification is literally just a third party, another company, that is able to connect into a media owner's systems and report directly to the client how many ad plays they got or how many impressions they had. So instead of a client relying on the media owner to send a report to say this is how many ad plays you got, there is a potential for fraud to happen within our industry. I guess if we look at the issues that plagued the internet advertising industry when they went programmatic, bots started creeping in. People were trying to find ways to, just manipulate advertisers. And it's very important that we don't fall into the same traps and mistakes that happened in the past. So media owners need to be extremely aware and also just be hyper ethical in understanding that we are able to manipulate things, but we need to do things cleanly, and we need to try to find a standardization. So the world, from a global standpoint, digital out of home guys are talking about how can we standardize the way impressions are loaded within systems and the way programmatic is bought to, because ultimately we've got to make it safe for clients. When the digital industry, which is the big pot, is able to feel safe, we will absolutely start seeing a lot more money coming in from digital strategists. But for the next year, we're still trying to make it more safe and trying to learn a little bit more. Otherwise, we also see sustainability is also very much a hot topic at the moment. Climate change is not a thing we talk about and going to see in the future. We turn on our news now and actually see how this is impacting us today. But what this means is just consumers are demanding that companies need to be more sustainable. So these will eventually start pressing onto agencies, and agencies will have to start making decisions as well on media owners that are thinking about their environments. Let's look at some examples. I mean, Germany most recently, even though it was war orientated, but because they have an energy crisis, all digital billboards are mandated to shut down at nighttime. There's no ad serving at night. You can get served a hefty fine. That is a result of energy inefficiencies within the environment. Here in South Africa, we've had load shedding for so long now, but still, we as media owners, we need to start thinking about how we can be more self-sustainable and also leave the least amount of impact within our industry. As we start building more billboards or digital billboards, these do consume quite a bit of energy. We do need to start thinking about how we can be more sustainable. But on the overall, the digital out-of-home industry is extremely healthy at the moment. Locally and globally, we are seeing substantial growth. We are getting to a point where digital out-of-home spend will overtake that of classic spend. It is in some markets overseas that has already happened. South Africa is busy moving into that space, but overall digital out-of-home is a very good space to be in at the moment, even outpacing the recovery of other mediums such as TV, which we've seen from a global standpoint.
Yeah, Remy, thanks. Thanks, a great response. And I think it covers quite a lot of different aspects. And I certainly am looking forward to kind of the next year. And like I said, figuring out that where does it sit? Who do I speak to? The point is that everyone's excited. I think that's really important. I'd like to move over to Sally now. Kind of Sally, when we chatted earlier, you had mentioned some of, I think you've given us a glimpse into what's really kind of happening around integrated campaigns. And I wanted to find out from you, as out-of-home experts, at the end of the day, when we sit down with a glass of wine and we think about the out-of-home landscape in the evenings, and we think, what really excites us? What gets us up in the morning that we can't wait to see what's happened? I know from my perspective, I love the campaigns that I look at and I think I should have done that. That feeling of like, what a cool idea that is, or how can we grow that idea? And I wanted to find out from you, Sally, what really excites you about the current landscape in out-of-home at the moment?
Thanks, Liv. What doesn't excite me at the moment? There's so much happening. I think I'm very fortunate to have such awesome clients that I get to work with. So, I mean, that in itself is such a huge opportunity where we get to do things that haven't been done before. So I think, what excites me is a challenge. So, how do we do things better? How do we do it stronger? How do we achieve what really needs to be achieved? And, how do we make waves in the industry? And that in itself, I think, excites me. Creating experiences is a massive, massive part of media and marketing comms. And I mean, Vanya was talking now to the Coke Studio stuff, and that is not just a strong strategy, but the experience that's going to be created from that is just something that we're all excited to go and trial and see, and have that to have that available in out of home, and to have the technology growing as quickly as it is really awesome. I think our landscape's evolving really quickly. Programmatic, like Remy's been talking to Programmatic, it only launched recently, but already we're trying to find ways of doing it better, and which are the right DSPs that we should be using, and how are we making the content relevant. So we're adapting really, really quickly. And what's actually really starting to get me excited is where we're moving to. So there's a lot of new stuff, and coming out of lockdown, there's a lot of eyeballs on out of home, obviously, because everybody is now out of home after being indoors. They're looking at out of home differently. They're receiving the messaging differently. We've got new data coming out soon. That's going to be really exciting, and something that we can start to work with. But Remy stole my thunder there. I really wanted to talk about the eco principles as well. It's a huge, huge topic for me at the moment. Carbon neutrality globally in media is, it's what we should all be thinking about. And I don't think it's something that is on the South African radar. We as an economy, I don't think we are as focused on recyclable materials. I don't think we have as much access to it, on a daily basis. You walk around the European high streets and every single corner has got a recycling station for you to just, carry on with your day as normal, but it's always top of mind. And I think brands, agencies, media owners, we all need to start thinking about how we can, move into more of a recyclable space. And that's going to open up a whole world of opportunity as well. And do a lot of good along the way. I don't know if you ever saw, so the way this really also comes into the media space, I don't know if you saw years ago, there was a billboard that a university actually used as a trial basis in Lima. I think it was like 6 or 7 years ago. And there's an impoverished community in Lima that have no access to drinking water. So they built a billboard that through osmosis used the humidity in the air to actually develop drinking water for the local community. That water could be tapped directly from the billboard, and they ended up serving 9,000 liters of drinkable water to their community over the 3-month period. So when we start to take the not just the carbon neutrality and the recyclable components, but also, again, that experience with the consumer and smart media, that's the stuff we should really be getting excited about, or it gets me excited anyway. So I would like to start seeing more solar coming into the digital space. I would like to start seeing more, opportunities of different types of materials. And I think that we can all kind of move in a very positive direction with that. But on the agency side, we get to play. So there's so many different techs, there's so much innovation, such cool clients. So I think there's a lot to wake up in the morning for.
Yeah, Sally, thanks so much. And I think, I can really see your passion around that kind of like eco space. And I think it's such an important thing to highlight that, it's like out of home for good. It's not just, to get your brand messaging out there. It's how do you include different aspects to that. So I love that. Yeah, thank you for that. I'd like to move to Warren now. Kind of when we're looking at like booking out of home, obviously pricing and measurement are two kind of the factors that do come up as part of the consideration set for out of home. And regarding pricing specifically, Warren, what is your perspective on how kind of pricing is happening in out-of-home, specifically more so in the static out-of-home space? Are we seeing like a race to the bottom in some instances? The market is so full of different media owners and different format types. What is your perspective and take on kind of where pricing is sitting in out-of-home at the moment?
Yeah, I think pricing, it's always been a challenge within the out-of-home market, and it's not exclusive to static alone. So it's been a general concept, for everyone to look at and focus on. Again, COVID has caused havoc with our pricing in 2020. This dropped our achievable prices drastically. Numbers were hugely low. It's pretty much like the Springboks moving down the table in the rugby championship at the moment. But yeah, prices were knocked back terribly, and as a result, to get those prices back up has been very difficult. Large discounting on out of home became a norm, and this was hand in hand with a massive decrease in marketing budgets and media spend from clients and brands. So, for me, it's remaining flexible in terms of media opportunities for brands, and the client is very, very important with it. So package pricing opportunities in terms of static and digital, longer term bookings are definitely picking up as per Mzi's point a bit earlier. And client relationships for me are still enormously vital in this market to discuss the relevant packages or pricing opportunities and where things are moving forward. So briefly put, I think as the demand for static keeps improving, the growth of the digital out of home side increases, I just see that the market correction will happen naturally.
Yeah, that's great, Warren. Thank you for that. And I agree, like when you look at packaging, I think that's where pricing becomes quite interesting, as well as the recovery post the huge COVID discounts, that we should start to see the market starting to stabilize again. I've touched on it. I think a lot of the panelists have touched on it. Sarika, you touched on it yourself around kind of like ROI and measurement in out of home. And I wanted to find out from you, Sarika, when it comes to measurement, and from a client perspective, how critical is measurement in a decision around considering out of home and considering a certain environment? I think, for me, one of the gifts of COVID to the out-of-home industry, if I can say such a thing, was a focus around justifying audiences. Suddenly, overnight, you had to justify how many people were on the road so that you could sell your out-of-home inventory. And, we've got the Out-of-Home Measurement Council, the OMC, is the most commonly used form of measurement. There's also other ways to do measurement, for example, through mobile data or through Lightstone data using trackers in cars. And there's a lot of new formats that have come to market, and media owners are really focusing on how to justify audiences in that space. So it's great to see measurement coming to the fore. And like I said, I wanted to find out from a client perspective, how critical is measurement when it comes to decision in out of home?
Thanks, Livia. So I think the first thing is, yes, there's data analysis paralysis at this point in time. And I don't think it's just the media industry, it's the marketing fraternity. We have to really showcase return on media investment as a whole and return on marketing investment as the whole. So whilst tools are available on the media owner side or the channel side, clients or brand teams also employ research or bespoke research through marketing mix modeling, whether you're working with Kantar or we've done a mix with IRI as well. So you're seeing it both ways, and then you're seeing brand-led studies also coming to the floor. But I think the first thing is not to be fully controlled by the data paralysis, because we can find ourselves getting really stuck in the data and being unable to justify an innovation or a piece of work that is actually going to do a real good for the community or the brand itself. So that's the first thing. Whilst I am a geek for data and I absolutely adore it, I don't think we should be fully reliant on it. And let's be honest, it's not fully robust as yet. We still don't have total outdoor spend on ad dynamics. Okay, okay, so we still don't have a total view, and I see the chuckles. We also don't have full out-of-home measurement on the out-of-home measurement survey, and we were at the incept of it from a client side many years ago. So it's not fully covered, so we can't be fully reliant on it. We must use it as a trended piece of data. We must use it to justify the role of outdoor in an overall channel mix, and I'm going to start with that as the biggest thing. That I think firstly, it's critical to identify your media objectives or your channel objectives. I think that is the critical thing, and understand the role of outdoor in that overall purchase funnel? Are you measuring at the top of the funnel, which is awareness? Are you measuring at the bottom, at the middle level, which is consideration and engagement? And then what are those KPIs and metrics? Are you measuring at the bottom, which is conversion, loyalty and advocacy? So you fundamentally have to start with setting the KPIs across the funnel for the specific channels that you're measuring. And that's something that I'm so grateful that our brand teams have adopted. We work very closely with Group M Outdoor, and we work closely with Wavemaker to set the KPIs at every stage of the funnel. And that's something that's critical. And I implore more media agencies and more media owners to talk about, because fundamentally an awareness metric is never going to lead you down the bottom of the funnel. And then the other aspect is, how do you measure purpose, or how do you measure an emotional reaction outside of a marketing mix modeling or an ad tracker and ad noting? And that's that ambiguous space we find ourselves in the space of innovation. So those are the kind of metrics where I really love the space of ambient or digital out of home, because you could perhaps have some level of a call to action or a follow through and a call to action to engage with a specific piece of work. So that is quite critical. But I find myself in a space, in a quite exciting space, where I represent 9 categories and 35 active brands at any given time in 12 different markets. We understand it's dog eat dog. And we've got to take some risks. And that's something I implore more of my client counterparts. Take some risks, let your agencies run with it. Let's have a bit of fun in the space. Let's bring all the parties into the room. I think it's critical. More conversations need to be had between a Google, a media owner, client, and a media agency, and a digital agency, of course, and a performance agency. And the more we start talking together, drop our egos, drop our prides, drop our technical specializations, drop your acronyms, and just land the bloody idea. And I think that is where I am anal about. I don't think we're short of ideas. We've just created new jargon to intimidate people, intimidate the industry, or whatever the case is. And we live by our jargon because I don't know what makes us feel better other than Xanax. I think the biggest thing is gamification was here 20 years ago. I recall landing the Nokia board with our team when we landed the Windows Phone. That was 15 years ago. And we were using mobile devices to speak to the billboard opposite the Gautrain. So, and I recall many other clients doing this. So we all recall ordering our Nike Times Square. These boards were speaking back to you, and that was 15 years ago. So we're not short of technology and not short of ideas. Where we're short of is implementation and operational excellence. Guys, let's be honest, we hate innovation deep down, because it means past the media schedule, shame, there's going to be creative matrix. There are going to be 17 sprint sessions to land that cutout of that bloody billboard. Now you must transcend this idea to Kenya, Nigeria, and Dubai. And then in turn, you must also measure it. But then can you imagine that one cutout landed on the board upside down? And I think that's where it's critical, where operational excellence, if you want to do innovation, get ready for the long nights, get ready for the fact that big ideas equal, you have to go past the chase list of the media schedule, media agencies. You'll have to have a point of view on the creative. You're working with the big guns in the above the line space, but you're working with the big guns in the outdoor space. And the biggest success I've seen in my out of home journey has been when we've had the above the line agency, the creative agency, the PR agency, because we want hype around it, the media owner, all in the same room. And those are the examples that I've had the best, the most fun in, the most stress as well, and the late nights, but I think it pays off. So for example, on the F&B side, Black Friday was a thing, and we wanted to innovate on our digital out-of-home holding at that point. And what was critical is we wanted social media through an RSS feed to actually start showing us the data of the top deals going and the interaction between our customers and the digital billboards. And that was critical because we had to vet those tweets going out first and foremost. I think that, that's something that you had to do. So you had to have screeners on one side, then you had to have our media partner, and we had like 5 media partners at that point, really vetting, sending them creative within seconds. And literally these boards were live, like we're talking 10 seconds in between the updates. What did that mean? We had a war room. We were all in the same war room. It's the same example when we had to do the announcement for Rugby World Cup. The trophy was being engraved, if everyone remembers that, for the Springboks. our media partners had two sets of creative. Everything could have gone wrong at that point, and outdoor was going to be the first channel that landed it for FNB as to the box were bringing it back home. I'm talking 5 seconds as that trophy was being engraved, we went live on outdoor. And that's the power and the impact of media partnerships, not the platform, but true media partners who are going to hold your hand and really walk the journey with you when you want to do something crazy and that could get you arrested in some circumstances. I also draw the whole thing on measurement. How do you measure purposeful outdoor? Sally spoke about functional outdoor and smart media where the boards through osmosis create water. What about the solar panels? What about Wi-Fi? Lisa spoke about Wi-Fi enabling communities. Data is the new currency. At CANS, for many years, we always see the functional outdoor where it's not just about a billboard, but a billboard drawing attention to a play gym because we realized that kids weren't active. So brands are now getting more involved in gym facilities and making outdoor an ambient space. So I'm gonna stress that in some instances you can't measure that, but it's doing good for the community. And perhaps the measurement is not on the outdoor space, but on the overall campaign objectives that you seek to achieve. And then I'm going to take the measurement on another angle, is measuring the capability and the training, because we all need it. And I'm going to challenge as well and agitate, because now, is it a digital strategist or is it an out-of-home strategist or is it an integrated channel strategist? What is the space? We're going to have to start investing in a lot more capability training, and we're going to have to measure ourselves. Again, drop the egos. If we don't know, we don't know. Play vulnerable, hand on heart. I don't profess to know everything, and nor do my agency teams. And we have a long way to go in capability training as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for your response. And I think you've unpacked, like, I could honestly spend another 3 hours discussing a whole lot of the topics that you've unpacked. And I think that what really stands out for me is, like, I love the drop the ego. You don't have to measure everything. Like, measurement's important, but it doesn't mean if you can't measure it, it goes out the window. And I think that's really important around, out of home and the consideration of out of home. So thank you for the detail. And like I said, I love your response, and I'm sure we can set up a whole series discussing some of the stuff that you've touched on. I want to move over to Celia and kind of linked to the discussion that Sadika has just given now is around, there's so much going on in the industry, and there's metrics, and there's new data, and there's new tech, and there's new tools, and it can be really intimidating as current people in the industry as well as new people joining the industry. And Seals, I'd love to hear what advice you could give for anybody starting out in the media industry on how to set themselves up for success, how to stay on top of all the different developments, any advice that you can share for any newbies or any current people who need a bit of inspiration.
I just have to tell you, before I answer your question, I've had my first media owner walk in the door. They heard the conversation, they came and opened the door.
I love that.
So, yes, I mean, I think when people look at the advertising industry as a whole, it can be very, very daunting. But what other industry are you able to bring accounting, data, creativity, innovation? Your world is your oyster in the marketing industry. But if there's one thing you have to be open to, is keep on learning and keep on changing. You have to be able to trust your colleagues, to trust your clients. And I do believe we've lost a bit of that trust through COVID, not being face to face with one another. We've lost the trust in putting up our hand to say, I want to learn, I want to be humble, I want to grow. And that growing doesn't only have to be upwards, it can be sideways as well. There is never a glass ceiling in any growth capability. As long as you're moving, as long as you're earning, you don't have to profess to know, as what Sadika said, every single piece of technology. If you understand the principle behind it, that is what is going to grow you, and that is what you can take to your clients. 9 times out of 10 in media, we talk a lot of words, a lot of gobbledygook, and clients look at us and they nod and they smile and they go, oh, great. They have no clue what we're speaking about. We need to bring it back down into what is understandable And what is the consumer thinking? I mean, we as media agencies, we go out, we see billboards and we're like, oh, we're driving brand awareness. What's the consumer thinking? How are they interacting? We putting it in from our side. And that's what drives me. And that's what should drive everyone coming into the agency. What are people thinking? What are they feeling? How are they interacting with brands? And people will grow as long as you have that open mind, that trust and the learning ability. You're in.
Yeah, Seals, thanks so much. I love that. And I think that you've made some really good points around being open to learn. I'm conscious of our time, and I can't believe our time is almost up, but I do really want to just sneak in one more question for Ivania. Ivania, I'd like to hear from you, kind of looking back over your career, what is the best advice that you've been given that you can share with us?
I'm going to keep it short. As you say, I feel like I could also be part of this panel and keep chatting for a couple more hours. But yeah, I think for me, look, it may sound very cliche, but probably one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten is believe in yourself and shoot your shot. Nothing's impossible. And I think, yeah, for me, it's like, always aim for the stars. The only answer you're going to ever get that you're not going to be happy with is no. And we can all deal with the no. So yeah, I think that's one thing that's gotten me very far in my career, to always believe in myself and make sure I always shoot my shot no matter what. Liv, I think you're on mute.
Oh, sorry, here I go. Thank you so much, and I love that you've shared that with us. That shoot the shot. I think that's a perfect place to end off on. I would really like to thank my amazing panelists. Like I said, I think I could spend a whole rest of the day speaking about this, and we've unpacked so many interesting topics. I love that we have put out of home in the forefront. I love that we have had a straight conversation with none of the nonsense, which is what I've always been about. So yeah, thank you to the panelists. Thank you to everybody who's joined us on the line. Thank you to the sponsors. And yeah, I look forward to connecting with all of you again.